Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We'll start with opening remarks of the Director General of Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Bar Tal, and then we'll open it for questions. Director General, please.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining our brief. I'll start with a few words about the last weekend. Probably already heard that during this weekend, Israel once again accepted the Special Envoy Steve Witkoff's proposal for a ceasefire and release of the hostages. Once again, Hamas refused and rejected the proposal. Therefore, Israel has no choice but to resume its military operation for achieving its just objectives, releasing our 58 hostages still held in inhumane conditions in the hands of Hamas, dismantling Hamas military capabilities and making sure that Gaza will no longer possess a threat to the Israeli citizens. This war is Hamas' sole and full responsibility. Hamas is responsible for starting the war on October 7th with horrific massacre. Hamas is still responsible for the continuation of the war by its refusal to release our hostages and its refusal to lay down its arms. Hamas can end this war immediately by releasing our hostages, laying down the arms, and the war is over. Regarding the humanitarian aid, Israel facilitated the entrance of aid into the Gaza Strip throughout the war. During the 42nd days of the ceasefire starting in January, Israel facilitated the enormous amount of 25,000 trucks of aid into Gaza. This resulted in huge surplus in food and other items. But Hamas hijacked the aid. Hamas monetized the aid in order to feed its engine of war, recruiting militants, recruiting more terrorists, and weaponizing. This has prolonged the war, no question. The former US President Joe Biden himself stated in October 23rd that if Hamas would take control of the aid supply, it should be stopped. The purpose of the aid is to help the population, not to support Hamas. This is the rationale behind the new American model for aid presented 10 days ago by US Ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee. Few words about the new model of aid. An international fund, GHF, will operate based on this principle: direct aid to the population in Gaza, but not to Hamas. Israel supports this plan fully. The fund will distribute the aid in several distribution centers located in safe areas in Gaza. The IDF will not take part of the distribution. The IDF will secure the perimeter. The distribution sites should be operating in a matter of days. Having said that, regarding the resuming of the aid today, I would like to elaborate a little bit. From the beginning of the war, Israel has stated clearly, we are monitoring the levels of basic items in Gaza, and we will facilitate the supply of items in low levels in order to avoid shortages. Due to these statements, Israel is now allowing the supply of such items to the population. This will continue until the beginning of the operation of the new fund, a matter of days. The purpose of this is to temporarily bridge the current needs until the fund's operation begins and supplies these items. The items to be supplied immediately include flour to the main bakeries operated by international organizations in the Gaza Strip, supplies of items to central kitchens operated by international organizations, baby food, and medical supplies. The IDF already engaged with the international organizations in order to immediately resume their supply operation. Today, Israel is facilitating the entry of trucks with baby food into Gaza. In the coming days, Israel will facilitate the entry of dozens of aid trucks. Its conclusion, the bottom line is clear. Israel always complies with international law and with its obligations and statements. Everyone in the international community should take a decision which side he is on Israel's side or on the Hamas side.
Thank you, Director General. We'll now open it for questions. Yes, please. Yes, please present yourself.
Good afternoon, Dan Williams from Bloomberg. Could you expand on the names of the American companies involved? How many personnel? And what safeguards do you have for the event of them being at risk?
First of all, it's very clear that the area is not as safe as the center of Israel. On the other hand, it's very clear that the American fund took all the measures in order to protect the sites. As I said before, Israel will protect the perimeter itself, but not the distribution centers.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Yep.
Yes, please.
Let's start one by one.
Yes.
Well, they're interlinked. The first last week, those are in HF will require a distribution mechanism. How are those people going to pay?
First of all,
You can't travel.
yes, first of all, as I explained before, the sites, the centers of distribution will be located in safe areas in order not to harm the population. Secondly, the fund plans to expand its distribution centers to more sites in order to allow more and more people in Gaza to be benefited from this aid directly. Now, once we will monitor cases of lack of aid, we will react as we did until now. It's very clear. We will try to support the population as much as possible.
Thank you.
But they've
Yes.
already said they can't reach those. That's
Next
all.
question.
They've already said they cannot reach those.
James, please. James McKenzie. Yes, please.
James McKenzie from Reuters. Could you elaborate a little bit on how much aid you're going to let in? The United Nations is saying there's 9,000 trucks waiting at Gaza crossing points. About half of that has food in it. Will all of that be allowed in the next phase?
The amount of trucks you just mentioned probably covering more than few days of supply. As I said before, we are now bridging specific gaps on several items that are close to shortage, are not yet there, but at low levels. And in few days, the operation of the fund will commence. Therefore, we will allow in the numbers of trucks that, first of all, that will be able to get in because there is logistics, but we will facilitate the entrance of such trucks in order to cover the needs until the operation of the fund commences. They are not, you don't need to put all these trucks in. First of all, logistically, it's impossible to put all of them at once, that's clear. But we're speaking about increasing the quantities of the trucks as logistics is getting better and better. And once the distribution centers are opened, most of those trucks will be supplied probably to the centers of distribution.
Yes, yes, please.
Who is?
Yeah.
Claire Parker from the Washington Post. Can you just elaborate a bit on how you're calculating how much bare minimum food needs to get in order to prevent a hunger crisis? Because on May 5th, David Mencer from the Prime Minister's office said that according to Israeli calculations, several months would be fine without lifting the blockade. And at that same time, the United Nations was saying there was a hunger crisis. We were hearing that people in Gaza were eating 1 meal a day if they were lucky. So how are you calculating this amount of food, and would you describe it as subsistence level or a level that's actually adequate for nutritional health?
Yeah. First of all, COGAT of the IDF continue its monitoring on daily basis in order to know if there is a real shortage or it's question of propaganda made by Hamas and echoed by irresponsible reporters. I have to say it very clearly. What we know about now is that this day we achieve in the monitoring that some items are at low levels and immediately responded with activating the aid supply, even that we know that in days from now there will be distribution centers. So immediately we have responded. Calculations, measures, and monitoring made by COGAT and others, you know, it's under the Ministry of Defense, but you can approach them with specific and technical questions.
Thank you. And I think we have time for one more question.
Okay, let's take another one.
Yes, James.
Hi, James Shutter from the Financial Times. Just on the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, how is it being funded? And was it an Israeli idea, or was it an idea that was brought to Israel by third parties?
First of all, it's an American initiative, and that question must be addressed to them. What Israel does is that we are asking the international community, organization, donors, UN, etc., to support the effort. It's very important, and it answers the real needs of the population and avoiding the hijack of the aid by Hamas. That would help the population much more than any other model that we know so far. And if anybody has a better idea, we are always open for more ideas, but we support fully the American initiative.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. That's all for today.
Very much.